first. Morning, Frank. Morning, Kate.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday.
Morning.
Yes. Kate, how's the family feeling?
Good. Bodhi, our oldest, he's back at school today, so I was like, great.
Yeah, I know, right?
It was a long week last week, but yeah, it's a big relief to have him back at school.
Right.
How about your family?
We're still it's been a tough week. It just kind of continued. Did shifts all weekend with little baby Charlie, and so we're gonna take her in late today to see if she needs oxygen or something like that. I think she might have RSV.
Oh no.
Her cough got a lot worse over the weekend, so we'll see.
Oh, baby coughs are so sad.
I know.
Yeah,
and you can't give him anything either.
Right?
That's like the pain with it. I know, like when my Vern 4, I was like, cold medicine.
I know, right?
Everything else is like, like honey and elderberry, like,
Yeah.
like, okay, that's not that helpful.
Yeah. Yep. Let's see, Amy, morning, Amy, and Lisa, morning.
Russ, you have to go to like children? Are you gonna take her to children's, or?
We'll go to our pediatrician first, and then we'll find out what they say.
Okay.
They may, sometimes they just send you home with like oxygen. I just can't imagine. It's not perfect. Thanks, Jenna. Well, welcome everybody. This is our last meeting, or last day of meetings for our Urban Landscape Conservation Task Force. So thanks for being here. I think there's a few people filtering in. And today is largely just really about picking up where we left off last meeting and getting through the last few edits that we have on some of those recommendations. I thought a good place to start might be, and Austin, this was kind of your suggestion, but I thought I'll share screen just to kind of give you guys an idea of what this would look like. I think I can just share straight in design here. And I think you're seeing that now. I can zoom in a little bit, but this is, I'll just scroll up. And so this is the way things look now, right? So we say like, here's the areas for additional research. We have the complementary efforts to watch, and we have all of our actions on the first page, and they fit on one page. Austin, I think it was your suggestion. I just wanted to check in and kind of give you guys a visual. I think if we blend in those other areas of research, it's going to make it where we can't fit it on one page, which honestly, it's whatever you guys want. But here's one way we could treat it to kind of create a little bit more ease of reading, as we could just kind of point to that action that they kind of live next to, and then put those. It's hard because some of these there's like 0 underneath, and some have, in this case, I think 6 underneath it. The other way we could do it is just have it right in the text. So here's an example. You've got your main text, and you have those areas called out for research underneath it. And then, here's a couple that don't have any, and another one that has one. So I just wanted to put that out there for the group to maybe think about. If you're comfortable with not seeing all the specific recommendations and having that, it makes no difference to me. I didn't want anybody to have a shock when they came back to see what they thought about it.
I'm intrigued by that second approach that you have on the screen right now, because because what I like about that is it shows that to get to a full turf replacement program, which is a key recommendation, like there's a lot of research that needs to be done before you can just plunge headlong. Like there's a lot of things we don't understand. So it makes it a little hard to see the connection in the research areas and how those relate to recommendations. And now the way you have it there, you can see, oh yeah, I see these research areas are in support of this key recommendation.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, yeah, that's fine.
I like that. I mean, okay. If you can make it, if it works for you guys and the rest of the group, that looks good to me.
Okay. And for those just joining, we were just kind of contemplating, Austin's suggestion last time at our meeting was to have the research and analyze areas kind of come up and sit underneath the action that they most, the kind of recommendation that they most closely aligned with. And so Austin is, I bring that up only because it gets you to a place where you can't fit all of these on one page. I mean, arguably it was a 2-pager before, just broken out by those kind of major recommendations and the areas to research and the complementary efforts. And Austin is saying that he actually likes this, so that's fine with me. I just wanted to make sure that they had a chance to weigh in, because it will push all the recommendations just across 2 pages.
But the one thing I would say, it's not clear from the way it's laid out right now that those sub-bullets are research areas. So I think you would want like a sentence at the end of every bullet that has research needs under it. There'd be like a sentence that say, like, in order to meet this recommended need, like the following research is required, or something like that, just so you know what you're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we just say,
but yeah, I don't want to like people to feel like I'm railroading this through. Like, if people are not into this idea, like I'll take it personally.
I would agree. I mean, I think that, like, to me, it's that this is like opening the door, but that there's a lot more, work to still be done. And I agree, Austin, with, basically that there's a lot that we don't know. So to me, I think that, tying them together makes sense.
maybe needed is likely needed. I mean, how did you say that, Austin?
The following research and analysis would be beneficial. I don't know. Is needed is
I'm good. Yeah, whatever language you like.
yeah.
This is Lisa. I really like that, but I wonder whether or not, I mean, and this is just getting into the weeds, do we really want to say meet, which seems to suggest if you did do all of those research things, all of a sudden the light would come out of the clouds and everything would be great. I mean, the research areas sort of inform it, right? Inform their recommendation and what could happen with it.
Yeah. It's necessary, but not sufficient.
Right. Who knows, right? Who knows? But like, if you just say meet, that might suggest that once you get all that done, you'll be there, right?
Right. Good call.
Yeah, I'm wondering, and I don't mean to be the wrench, but I'm wondering if this, yeah, I'm not totally sold that the research needs would be under each recommendation. I don't know.
I'll throw out one happy median is one thing we could do, and maybe this helps to keep it short. We could throw all the recommendations in the order that you've, with the edits that you provided in the order that you want at the very beginning, and just say some of these have research needs underneath it, and then show it this way when you get to it at the end. That might be a way to have the shorter thing up front and the longer thing on the backside.
That could work. Yeah. As
Well,
long as there's some way to reference research activities to specific recommended goals.
Right. That makes sense, Austin.
Yeah, and I think the reason why my brain is going down this road is because, to me, the recommendations are kind of the area of the task force has the most agreement, and these are important to inform those. But to me, when we lay it out like this, then it seems to me like we've got, 6 things under turf replacement that have now reached, even though they're sub bullets, they're pushing everything else to the second page. You know what I'm saying? To me, I just don't know if it lends the weight to the actual recommendations by having it this way. But maybe I'm the only one who thinks that, and I'm willing to flex. I think it's just a matter of, it's just an organization question.
Yeah.
Russ, that first or that like other version that you had, do you think that just like wouldn't fit? Because I do like what I like about that is, to Catherine's point, like it allows the recommendations to stand on their own. And then, but then also like ties in that, hey, like this isn't, you know, the end all be all. There's like a lot more that needs to be done or that we need to understand. And I'm also wondering if we can shorten the explanations of the research. Like it seems like the research explanations are just as long or longer than the recommendations themselves.
Mhm. So let me just answer those in order and then let others weigh in. I think if we did it this way, it would still force the recommendation to go across 2 pages because it's just too much text. One thing that we could potentially do if you wanted to show them beside it, and this is what we kind of did back in the document next to you, is we just kind of boiled these down to just like their titles. And then we could say like see full text at the end or something like that, and then maybe we could do that. So, you know, like something like that, but just an option.
So you're saying, Russ, like, I do like this a little bit better. Just if formatting wise, you've got like the recommendations on the left and the research needs on the right, because that means to me that they're okay. The research is a little different, but it's really important to consider. You can't just run with these recommendations without doing the research. So to me, this makes sense. I do think you're right that it is a little long on the right. So could we? I'm following along with you here. um, yeah. So the idea behind the research and analyze is just saying these are really important components that inform these recommendations that we're recommending to advance.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in my mind, these were kind of other things that I don't know always had like we should definitely do this, you know, that rose to an action, but maybe things that nobody also argued with that, you know, would be a good research project. So per Austin's recommendation, we just tried to bucket those under the recommendation that they seemed most to go with. And so some will have 0. This one is an example of one that has the most. It has 6. A couple have 2 or 3. So yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, if you thought about this as, you know, what's the one pager that we're gonna hand out, you know, when we go, you know, went to an event, or the thing that would, you know, that you might share. That's kind of, you know, the very front of the document, we have basically the same thing. So we could show it differently up front, which in kind of draft 1 was like taking a stab at that and was maybe a little too artsy, but you know, we could just show the text and just have the titles. Like there's also research that go with these things to keep it short. And then when you get to it on page 27, you have this full text, if that would be better, or we could slice and dice it any way you all like.
Can I add in here? So just kind of going back in history of the dialogues we had, some of these, particularly around when we had a lot of the dialogue around turf, because that's where we spent most of our discussion as groups, the outcomes of those discussions got much more specific, and some of the specific questions that we asked of you all was, you know, within the context of turf replacement, for example, you know, in what ways could CWCB play a supportive role? And if you think about these research pieces and the way it was written in the initial or in the other draft, is that these could be potential grants to help advance recommendations for policy change or for local level action or whatever it was. So these were complementary. It was in support of these, but you also provided a lot more detail than what might be broader recommendations text, because the recommendations are pretty high level and vague, whereas when we were talking about what might be a specific, you know, project, you got much more detailed. So in shortening and taking out any of the detail, just remember where it came from, I guess, would be one of the things that I would recommend, because you did provide more specificity. But
Right.
in terms of getting us to consensus, I guess the questions that are on the table are, as a group, do you want all the recommendations on one page? Is that important? Second, you know, what is the layout that we want for the supporting areas?
And Austin, I totally appreciate where you're coming from, but now thinking about this more, I kind of maybe like the way the CWCB had this last week, because like we didn't go through each recommendation and identify areas to research and analyze. So this is going to be an kind of an incomplete list that was just plucked from our conversations. And I think it kind of misconstrues maybe if we start putting them underneath them. And so I kind of like them separate. And I think most folks who are reading these are going to kind of understand, like, you know, they can, if they were to think about it, they'd be able to figure out like which recommendations they benefit. And so I'm not tied to that, but I just want to throw that out there.
I personally liked having these side by side, because I think part of the thing I'd be interested in communicating is that we still have a lot to learn, that, you know, we don't know so much that we have these really solid recommendations to move forward, that still need to learn a lot as an industry. There are probably different ways to communicate that, but I did like the side to side at some point in the document.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I
think
lean on the
that's
side of a little bit more than less, only because I want people to understand the breadth of discussion we've had up to this point. And I'm not an expert in formatting like Russ is, but I do wonder if you squeeze that middle bar a little bit to the left, and then the recommendations would be more in a block format, would that allow then, if we did detail the research and analyze topics, would that give kind of more equal spacing among the two? Because I like where Greg's going. I think a lot of us are doing complementary work to research these elements too. And we don't want people to believe that this is all ready to go and we can just get $1 billion and we'll be done. Which would be cool, of course.
Frank, I'm not sure I was checking. What are you saying? You're saying shorten this text here, move the bar left?
I'm wondering if you did that, would that squeeze those topics downward and kind of use the middle left or the left half of the page? And then if we did decide to return to the descriptions of the areas of research, would that allow those to be almost kind of two equal columns of
it wouldn't, because this is just a subset of the recommendations. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 12. So I just was doing this for sake of, I didn't finish it. I just was doing it to show. So I guess what I was proposing, Frank, just so we're trying to find the middle ground, is we could do something like this on the first time you see it, and then, you know, put this in the back if you would rather it that way. So that might allow us, I was wondering if that would allow us to keep these shorter in some way, or we could put them underneath, however we want to do it. So that we could maybe get the 12 back on one page, because there's just, here's going back up to how it looks currently. That's it. That's the example. It's this page. So like right now we already have, sorry for the scrolling. This is like a full page of text without edits. So I think our edits probably made them a little bit longer in most cases. So if you just imagine like equal size columns, you could see what would squeeze out of there. You get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe at best.
Okay, I see where you're going to fit them back with just the title of the research. Yeah,
because on page, I guess just to be clear about that, and maybe Jenna, let me know if I'm wrong about that, but I think it's like, it's actually, but isn't that very first up front, like page III or something, we have all of those recommendations listed once. So we could, where we list them up early, if it's important to try to get everything on the page, I could play around with some format like that. I also think Laura said something important there too. Like we could have a statement that says like, you know, by no means, or, you know, how do we phrase it? Like, is this meant to be all the things that might lend credence to researching these areas? These are just the ones that were pulled from the conversation we had. but we could do this up front, and I might be able to get it all on one page if we did it this way with just the titles. And then when you see it again later in the document, we could just reference on page 27 as the full text behind that. That's just a guess that I could fit it if I did it that way.
I
So-
think that would offer some benefit to get all the recommendations on one page and have the list of the research needs. I like that direction. So it sounds to me like there's two things that we're concerned about. Number one, that we want to ensure that people understand that we do have a lot to learn. So I'm wondering, Russ, is there a way that with the list we could just, oh, you have that there. Okay, I'm talking without reading through.
No, I
So-
added this either. It seems like in either case, however we do it, we want to bring in this language that Austin suggested and Lisa modified.
Yeah, I almost wonder if that becomes like a um, intro text under the areas to research and analyze, you know what I
Sure.
mean?
Yeah.
So that people kind of see that together with the list
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, referencing that there's a place where they could get additional explanation. That might be really helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Sorry to
mean,
cut somebody off.
So if we want to just have the recommendations on one page, then I think what we need to do, if it's followed by the research list, I think one of the things we could do is actually number the recommendations, and then in the research list, next to each research recommendation, we could put the number of the item it supports. And one of the things I was just noticing is there's several of the research areas actually support multiple recommendations. So for instance, knowing Colorado turf totals benefits like 5 of those recommendations, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if we were to keep this at one page for recommendations, then the way to link them, I think, would be if you could just numerically reference, like, after every research and analysis suggestion, you say, supports recommendations 1, 3, 5, and 6, or something like that. And the reason I think this is really important is because I think it's important for whoever's reading this, policymakers or whoever else, to understand what we don't know and how, like, if you say like, okay, this recommendation is really important to me, well, what do we need to know before we can move on to that specific recommendation?
Yeah, that's a really fair statement. I think that makes a lot of sense.
I like everything about that except for the time that we have to get that done. And if we get to consensus doing that, that's kind of how we land at it, edit the list the way we had it before, is like, here are other things that would benefit all of the above, arguably. So that's my only flag is, this is kind of a new thing that we're adding in. And I think Laura's point's well taken still, that there's probably other things too.
Mm-hmm. And if we start numbering or even lettering, it does start implying priority too.
You're right, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So can I make a recommendation? If we're coming full circle to having like agreement that all the recommendations need to be on one page, and then they're followed by the areas to analyze and research, perhaps what the context setting paragraphs that precede them can take some of this discussion for clarification and provide some better context on how to consider those. Like, I can say these support multiple, even if it's not identified. I do think that if we were to look at the original list of the recommendations were not necessarily grouped thematically, and the way that they're being presented now kind of ties them together a little bit more thematically. So maybe by having a little more order in the research, like the ones that are currently on the page, for example, are all related to turf replacement, the way they're written, and are not necessarily grouped together in the original list. So maybe some of it is providing some continuity in that list as well. But if I'm hearing, can we maybe like put a discussion point forward here for maybe moving us forward? Do you want, first of all, let's maybe use raised hands or something. Do you want to keep all of the recommendations on one page? Like, are we at a point where we've agreed that that's important?
And I guess there's two places for that too. So there's I guess in my mind, you're gonna hand out the front part of this and probably not the full thing if you're sharing it with somebody. So up front, we have the exact same list. We could treat it differently there. It's still on the table for those that's important. I guess, Marjo, I'm not sure we came full circle. Did we come full circle? I guess I felt like people liked this, but there was just some, I don't know.
So is one of the options to vote on the recommendations all on one page and then the list of research needs on the right? Is that one of the options?
I don't think they're gonna fit like that. If we do that, I probably have to just go with the titles up front, and then where they appear later in the document, we can write them all like this, or we could go back to this format, or we could go back to the original format and just have them on their own separate.
So one of the options is Russ, the one that you had with the titles?
I think so. I mean, I think what I heard Marjo saying, I think she's right. I didn't mean to imply that. I don't think we want to delete this detail. I'm just
Yeah.
suggesting that we show it once up front, which was a recommendation I think we got a few times of like, bring these recommendations up. Nobody wants to get to page 27 and read these. So where it appears like very early in the document, I think before the preface, we could just do the abbreviated version and say, see the full detail on page 27. And then on page 27, do it like this, or do it like this, or go back to the way we
understand. Okay. So we're talking about what does it look like in the kind of executive summary and what does it look like embedded in the document? Okay, so that makes sense to me. So let's deal with the executive summary version first and what you all want that to look like. And yes, we will deal with what the final recommendations are when we get there. But in that executive summary, Russ is presenting these as we might be able to get all of them on one page. Is that what I'm hearing?
I think so. And I'll just play around with it by just doubling the text here, and we can see, but I bet I can be creative, squeeze it in some way.
Right.
So this is an option for the executive summary, this particular layout?
I think so.
Okay, so it's this option, we're voting for this one versus
for the executive summary versus I think what it's currently, which is on 2 different pages, correct?
Correct.
with the recommendations on the first page and the research needs on the second page.
Correct.
Okay.
And then we can talk about what it is in the back. And I'm going to need, because we're using for decision making, going to need either verbal or thumbs up to be able to kind of manage our dialogue today. So if everyone can help me out.
And then you have the people this afternoon.
Yeah, I think I can get creative and make it fit if we did it something like this up front. So yeah, I guess to me there's is there not 4 options? Like the option up front, we can do it like this, or we can do it the way we did it. That's probably the only way to get it on one page. And then when we get to it and we see it again, we can do it. There's the way we did it. There's this way where they're all listed out and knowing that it's going to push those to 2 pages, or there's this way where they're just bundled underneath. So there's kind of 3 options for page 27 and 2 options for upfront if you want everything to appear on one page.
For the good of the order, I want to point out that Greg made a comment in the chat around some of the proposed combining our recommendations that's in the Google Doc. And I wonder if that combination occurs, would that change any of the formatting output here by squeezing a little bit of the space upward, since there'd be a little bit less total number of recommendations. I want to take a look real quick at that.
Frank, so you're saying there might be fewer recommendations and that would therefore change how much could get squeezed on a page. And I think what
Yep.
would be helpful, given we're working under extreme deadlines here, is if we can get your desired intent, they can play around with layout. So the intent of your, like, what is the intent you want in the executive summary? Is it to have all the recommendations in one location that make it clear and they're not then diverted, whether it's below or next to or the size of the box? I don't think we can do layout right now, but can we get to agreement on what you all want to communicate, if that makes sense? The layout is a tool to do that.
So I think you could kind of do something, if you were going to do the 2 columns, I think you could actually get something between the 2 models you presented, because when I was looking through all of the research and analysis bullets, and basically I think you could get rid of, you could keep just the first sentence for each one and it would be fine. Like there's a bunch, there's like 3 of them that have more than 1 sentence, and you could get rid of the second or third sentences and not lose any of the meaning based on my quick reading. And that would save you quite a bit of space, actually. And that would be sort of an in-between.
And we've got 3 people on the chat who would prefer to have it be all on one page. I think I would lean in that direction too. If we have people with limited attention or time, that might get the biggest benefit from their review of the document before they move on to something else.
Well, I just want to double check. I agree, Frank, but so Catherine, aren't you saying though that you like the research items on the right?
I do. I think that it does make sense to me to have all, this is where we just want the cake and eat it too, which is like, I'd love to see all the recommendations on one page and just saying, we don't know everything. Here's a list of things that we should really look into more before we super scale up. So I think the page that for the executive summary, I'd vote for the list of recommendations all on one page, and then the list of research needs and resources on the right. Whether that's with 1 sentence or not, I think that could be up to CWCB when they do the formatting. But I'm just throwing that out there. What do you think, Lisa?
I like the recommendations on one page. I keep thinking that the research, there's so much information there that's really good, and it's not inclusive. It's, this is just the start. So I don't know. I feel like I'm at the eye doctor. Is better now or now? Here or here?
Yeah.
Because I think it seems like Russ, and I apologize that my camera's off. I have the sun in my right now. So anyway,
Nice.
but I think that if Russ and Jenna and Kat, I mean, I think that you're picking it all up, and it's so hard to format by committee. So if we all say like recommendations on one page, if you think that you could do that, what Catherine's talking about, I think that'd be awesome. If it just looks too squishy, and the whole thing about the recommendations, Greg, I don't think it's too late to do some more consolidation. I'm just not sure, Marjo, if you feel like we have that kind of consensus in order to be able to do that. We kind of landed on the recommendations, and I hope it's not too late, because I think that Greg's onto something, but I'm not sure unless we all had that process.
Well, we're going to go through the remaining ones as soon as we're done working through the formatting question, and we'll see where we end up. Like we took some out the last time, so some of them were struck, and I think there's some recommendations for consolidation on at least 2 around incentives and price behaviors for discussion today, but maybe you guys have more. So we'll get there. So let me try to summarize the direction for CWCB for the executive summary at the front end is to work some magic to try to, one, clarify the intent around we don't know everything. I think we all got that. But to take the recommendations that come out of our discussion, to display them in one page if possible with some reference to desired areas of research, or some of them are not research, some of it is capacity building and stuff, but you know, these other areas for potential action that were, you know, would make good grants, but we don't know everything. And play around with the intro text. I think they can do all of that, but that gives them direction, which is what we're trying to get at, to making this better without trying to sit here and lay it all out, because there's limitations for what they can achieve, but they're going to try. So is that kind of where we're at?
That sounds good. I would just add on the question of the intro text. I think it's important just that, you know, even just one sentence that explains why we're showing both, right? The, you know, the recommendations and the research, to say that it's important to, there's a lot of missing information right now that we need to advance these recommendations fully, and it's given on the other column.
Yeah. Agreed. And then do we want to talk about what it looks like in the deeper in the document? Do you have a preference for how that's displayed? Do we want to use any of our time for that?
Yeah, I guess if just a general nod, if it's important to see up front the shorter thing, can we just have the discussion when we get to the longer thing, just to, if it flows across 2 pages there, or 3, whatever it is, it's less important. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Or do you want it the same to appear exactly the same?
No,
So a
that
couple
seems
thumbs
okay.
up. Yeah. Okay. Good.
Sweet. Thanks all.
All right. Now we're going to pivot. Excuse me, Joel, one second. I had a crud all weekend, so excuse my raspy voice and coughing through this. Today's the first day I don't feel like I was hit by a bus. If all of you are in the document, I'm going to go ahead and share the document and try to get Zoom to cooperate with me so that I can see everybody. All right. Excuse me. I'm going to hide myself so I can see more of you. Okay. So are you currently looking at my version of the Word document? Okay. What I'd like to do before we dive, I'm going to kind of provide an overview and then just sort of get general direction on where we're headed with these, again, for the sake of time. And I'll make this a little larger in case you can't see. I took some of the initial comments that were made over the weekend and have added in what I think those comments were in red italics in this document, because it's going to be hard for us to work from that particular comments. What I'd prefer for this discussion is if you guys could make comments. If you're going to be making comments, do it in Zoom. And if Kat and staff can help me monitor that, because I can't monitor everything, but not to make further comments in this unless you want to try typing in a suggestion. And my recommendation would be, if you have a suggestion for specific text, just choose a color and write it under the recommendation that we're working on. So I'm okay with you like typing improvements, just don't do it on a sidebar because it's hard to track when there's so many in Google Docs. they start moving really far down. So we have, let's see, advanced water and land use integration. The two that are related to sort of behavior through economics, price signals and economic levers, which there's been a recommendation on how do we bring those together. Capacity, which we had a question in our last meeting at the end of the meeting on, is this recommendation captured in other recommendations? And then I have a question for you all based on that. Addressing equity concerns. And then when we left the last meeting, Amy and Tori requested that they could work on the advanced dialogue on drought management and come up with new language that was supportive and reflective of what was coming out of the drought task force, to sort of lend our support to that. So those are, I think it's 5 remaining for us to discuss. And my recommendation would we just work through those and dive in, unless anyone would like to suggest a different approach. Okay. For the purposes of consensus today, because I can't get, thumbs up sideways, we'll probably just do, does anyone can't live with this, and we'll use it that way. And I'll ask you to raise your hand, because then I'll know. So that's how we'll do votes. All right, so let's start with the advanced water and land use integration. There were kind of 2 suggestions to this one, and they're right here in red, which kind of ended up as, I think the second one was building off of, this was Waverly, and then there's been multiple edits to this second one: support integration of long-term water, land use, and comprehensive planning and implementation tools to further water efficiency efforts and support climate appropriate landscapes. So I guess we'll just start with that second one with the same title. Sorry, I didn't move the title along, and see if there are other things we want to do in that. And so the water rates and fees was taken out because it's reflected in the 2 recommendations below. I think that was the major change. And as a planner, I'm like, yep, that's everything. It's my life's work in one sentence.
So Marjo, just to clarify, this one would have like 2 sub bullets under it, like it would have this.
No, sorry. No,
Okay.
those are the next. Sorry. It's a standalone as advanced water and land use integration. The recommendation on the table is that this is a rewrite of the. And
thank you for that.
See my highlights when I highlight? I can't tell if that actually works. Okay, this is the recommended edit.
And just real quick, I put support integration of, that was me, just because integrate long-term water, it seemed like we're trying to support or advance or whatnot. So I don't know that it needs to be support, but I just wanted there to be that kind of verb there.
Yeah. And that was actually going to be a question for me, is what is the actionable thing you're trying to, is it funding support? Is it just general, like, what are you trying to achieve with saying this other than we need to do it?
It could be, go ahead, Frank.
I think this one refers to the Colorado Water Plan. One of those elements was to get 75% of staff residents living in areas that have done that. So I think that's what this is speaking to, and a lot of effort has been made to get that underway. So I don't mind this this recommendation written the way it is, because I think it speaks to the language that the water plan has. Russ might correct me on that, but you know, Growing Water Smart and other efforts have been seeking to make progress here. So the way it's written is okay.
Frank, yeah, the 2015 plan says that in 2023, because there was really no great way to measure that, and the way that we defaulted to measuring that was what was in comp plans. We just hit the nail on the head and said that every comp plan should integrate basically one water ethic and have land use integration, water conservation, etc., reuse.
I like that, Frank. You know, the one thing that I'm kind of struggling with Laura's change, and I like the actionable item, but the support integration of long-term water. I guess I'm kind of struggling with the long-term part, and also it seems like water should have something after it. But that's, you know, water and land use, integration of water and land use.
Yeah,
And-
land use planning. Well, what I kind of like what you said, Russ. Your terminology might be more direct, but I agree with Lisa. Yeah, long-term water, land use. I see it's, you know, connecting the planning at the end of those three, but
Right. But I like this. I like the rewrite though.
Could we say the integration of long-term water supply and demand with land use? Silence.
Yeah, I do think you could. I do like that, Austin, where you say water supply and demand planning.
They are quite distinct.
They're very distinct. They're,
Yep.
yeah. So I think it'd be worth calling out both if we're going to go that way.
Yeah.
would it maybe be integrated or integrating?
Or we just need, yeah, or we just need an of.
You like having 15 editors?
This is like my dream day. It's exactly how I want to spend my time. Just kidding. I like consensus. So if this is what it takes to get to consensus, I'm in for you. All right. Any further improvements on that one? Can work with it. Anyone not in support of this statement? Hearing no objections, shall we move to the next two? Okay, I am going to memorialize this in some other, oh God, what's happening? Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna change colors or bold them or something. Here we go. How about, all right. We call that one consensus, mark it in purple or turquoise. Excuse me. Okay, in kind of trying to read through the comments on these two, and just sort of looking at, yes, there's similarities here thematically, and whether these should be combined was one of the recommendations. And I think what is occurring here is one is speaking more directly to what you have policy control over. So water budgets, tiered rates, tap fees are policy. And there were specific research and analysis related to you know, how to advance that. We talked a lot about this in terms of capacity, and, you know, the benefits of tiered rates. So there was kind of recommendations potentially in the document or that you might want to make that are related to the policy side. And then the second one is, there were some other discussions that I'm a little less clear on, but were more about, you know, are there different financial mechanisms or incentives that were not policy, but might be other tools, although tax breaks is a policy. So who knows? So I'm going to open this one up to, you know, where is the intent in the recommendations that you guys are trying to get at? And, you know, maybe the use price signals and use economic levers needs to be edited, or maybe they need to be combined, or maybe there's a different message we're trying to get at here. But I just wanted to be make sure that we're kind of reading these as, you know, one was supposed to be more policy, one was supposed to be more incentive, I guess. So I open it up to the floor.
Well, in this case, are the incentives, I do think that it is really important to really talk about water budgets, water pricing, conservation rates, tap fees. Those seem really, really important. And then the incentives, I'm wondering if those are already, I mean, there's kind of like turf replacement incentives and there's irrigation incentives. And I don't know if these need to be bundled together so much as just ensuring that we have incentives, the importance of incentives called out in irrigation and turf replacement, maybe?
So focusing what that one is about on the
Yeah,
conservation behaviors.
right, because I think I mean, incentives make sense programmatically when you're trying to encourage new adoption of something, and then at some point it doesn't make sense anymore, right? Because you can just do it through regulation or market
Mhm.
changes. So, um, I don't know what other incentives we would be really recommending beyond vegetation changes and irrigation upgrades. So I'm just wondering if some of this is a little bit in the second bullet. I'm wondering if it is necessary. I think the first bullet is absolutely necessary. I'm just kicking this off by saying that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And I agree with Catherine. That was my thought too, is like, we could maybe we need to say it more clearly under the other recommendations, but I think that use economic levers doesn't need to stay there. And then I do think the use price signals, I don't have other language to propose, but I think that heading might be good to rewrite to get to the policy more.
Is that all about water pricing, essentially?
One thing that's not there, Catherine, just, I think it largely is, but like, sorry, I apologize, but the developer from Northern Colorado, where things are a little different there and they may have to like bring water with them, those, like, that's not listed here, but that's another part of this, right? For those areas, like he was saying how they have to bring so much water, it doesn't incentivize the water efficient development. So that would be just the one instance where I think it would kind of fall under there, but that wouldn't be a pricing so much. That would be a water development requirement.
Policy, it's the water dedication policy that he was referring to. So, which is why these are policy related.
Just to offer a different perspective, I still think these all go hand in hand. I mean, I think somebody said that when we consider whether or not we're providing incentives, it's do we have a you know, are our charges already supporting it, or do our policies already sort of require you to be efficient? So I would still recommend that, or think that we could put these together. I can see utilities reading this as, you know, that here is the suite of financial measures we could take to support this sort of landscape transformation.
Yeah,
Can I
that's
just
a good point.
say take my facilitator hat off for a moment, because I read so much policy. Every community I have helped in Colorado, or essentially, there are very few that haven't already tried. They might not do enough, but they definitely use the basics of conservation behaviors. And my memory from some of your conversations were about, like, I thought you guys on the use economic levers were talking about like next level types of incentives that don't exist, or tax breaks that don't exist. I don't feel like you were talking about, I don't remember what they were. So I just want to throw that out there, that yes, maybe it was all financial suites, but my recollection's not strong enough. So stepping back and letting you continue. Okay, so 1 to combine, 2 to strike. What are other opinions?
Well, really, if we're trying to get to the point of reducing non-functional new turf installations, as well as removing those that are already in place, you're kind of trying to speak to both, right? Getting ahead of the new development to make sure that we're not putting in that new, as well as how do we structure the reduction in existing. Now that I'm reading this 12 hours later, it's not irrational to have both. And I don't know, gosh, I'm going back and forth, because I see the value of, like, how do we make sure that there's incentives to help reduce out there? But I like where Catherine's going, because we don't always want to pay people to do things that eventually should become just a market incentive. So
I mean, is it something like align policy and financial incentives to maximum, or align policy and financial water policy and financial incentives to maximize water savings or something? And then it's all of the tools.
Marjo, maybe it's use policy signals instead of price signals. Maybe those two words are getting us troubled, because would policy convey what you're trying to achieve there, and then economic stays in the second one? Is that more distinct?
Yeah, just to throw this out there, and Greg, I totally hear what you're saying, that I do think it would make sense if somebody's saying, okay, well, can't we just do this through market, economic means? If this is the bullet about economic means, now I'm coming around to what Greg said, but like, that, yeah, it's really how you price water, right? It's tap fees, and then it's conservation programs, either or incentives related to those tap fees or related to vegetation or equipment. So I don't want to lose, to me, when I hear the word policy, to me, it doesn't mean necessarily, and maybe this is just my naive or unpolicy mind. Policy means to me is about rules about what you can and you can't do. It doesn't mean to me economic means, but that is probably my inexperience with that field. So to me, as long as we're communicating that this is like economic pricing, something along that lines, for the general reader, I think that might help.
And I just want to, like, this is Kate, but when the economic levers one, I'm just wondering if that is like covered in the support turf replacement and existing development, which is continue state support for funding for voluntary turf replacement programs and projects and support local implementation of turf policy and incentive programs. Because I mean, basically that's getting at incentive programs, right? Like to me, that just feels like duplicative of the turf one.
It's a good point, Kate. I agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah, and do we have in the irrigation one, is there some mention of incentives there? Because I do think, at least for our utility, we're going to be offering irrigation equipment and project-based rebates for a while. So I'm just not sure if we have that there. That would be the other, because I think the turf incentives, like I agree with you, Kate, I think that checks that box. The other thing to me would just be irrigation requirements and incentives.
Okay, where were the irrigation recommendations? Somebody remind me real quick. Sorry, I'm gonna scroll, which is horrible when you're all looking at a.
Oh yeah, promote irrigation efficiency.
Yeah, I mean, we don't say exactly incentives, but I think it's embedded in that, right?
I mean, we're
Yeah,
saying
I'm
promote
okay with that.
efficient irrigation equipment, which promote is, I mean, like how else would you promote it? Just saying like, this is great, but
Yeah.
you know, the best way to promote it is to give incentives. So I mean, we could add something there, but I also think the word promote is insinuating that.
You do have incentive programs right above it in turf replacement and in existing development, at least.
Okay. So, and what I'm hearing then is potentially for the purposes of irrigation efficiency and turf that, whoops, now I've lost it. That this might be covered in the other two recommendations. And we'd be okay with removing this one. I'm seeing nodding heads. Would anyone disagree? And that we'll focus now on the phrasing of the other. Okay.
The only thing we'd be losing, Marjo, is the mention of tax breaks, but I wonder if the tax break component could be put in that other ideas section, you know, the what previously big ideas, but maybe that idea could just be bucketed down there so we don't lose that idea.
So that was one of the new tools in terms of identifying tax breaks, and that would go into the research analysis, other areas.
No, I don't think it would go in the research and analysis. I think it's just I don't know that this was a broad task force recommendation. I think it was an idea that came up during the discussion. So I would put it in I don't know what it's called now, but the previous version of the report, it was the big ideas section that captured all of the discussion. Maybe we just move the mention of tax breaks to there.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to strike that then. We're good with this? Oh, God. Do it in Google Docs. Okay, let's move back to, we agree with the importance of the one above. We're struggling with the title. And I felt like we left something out. What did we leave out potentially?
The water dedication
Water
requirement.
dedications. Okay. Okay. My brain is not working as effectively as it was on Friday. So or on Thursday, my editing skills for an option here are not great either. Maybe this pricing is what we seem to be stuck on. Okay. Thanks, Russ. The intent here, I just want to like take away from the language for a moment. So this is what the intent is: accurate to help establish reasonable water use and balance bills and housing affordability, which is kind of getting, both of those are getting at equity, which I felt like we didn't end up with a housing affordability agreement.
Well, to me, those water budgets, tiered rates, and conservation tap fees, those all are about really ensuring that after construction, water use is being held accountable, right? Like you said, you were going to use X amount of water, or we want you to use X amount of water. And then now that we're 10 years in, your water rates are going to be priced so that you really use X amount of water, or to help you. So to me, that's how I see those working. It's like,
Should it start with the upfront stuff, like the tap fees, the water dedication requirements? Because that's kind of the, that's like the upfront, setting the stage. You just said it, Catherine, like what, we want you to use. And then it goes into the longer term, like to keep you using that. And I'm not saying you write all that down, but I'm just wondering if we should like put those first and then roll over into like the tap fees and water budgets. I'm sorry, tiered rates and water budgets after that. Does that make sense? Or Catherine, are you thinking those are separate things?
no, I'm willing to explore that idea. I think that would be worth taking a look at. I don't have like a firmly formed thought, so let's go for it. Let's see if it works. I think the words I'm struggling with are help establish. I'm almost wondering if rather than help establish, it's
Laura, you're on mute.
Oh, yeah, no, sorry, part of it, I talked to myself and moved my mouth, but what about establish and maintain? Would that work? Or something?
Yeah, I
like
think that would be better. Yep.
I mean, another approach on that one would be to discourage water waste or water, inefficiency, because I think when we say to establish and, reasonable, lots of people already have reasonable water use. What we're trying to do is get people who are, throwing water away and not really using it effectively from doing so using pricing.
Yeah, I like that a lot more, Austin.
Yeah,
That's
me
exactly
too.
where I was trying to get to. That's perfect. I think that's
you
much
say that
closer to
one
what
more
we're trying to
time? What?
achieve.
So I'd say
Yeah.
then, rather than saying establish and maintain, it'd be to discourage, and we can fill in the blanks, to discourage inefficient or wasteful or, fill in the blank use of water.
Wasteful, would it just be wasteful irrigation?
Sure.
They say outdoor water use.
Yeah, sure.
Sure. Yeah.
If we're going to state that, then do we need to include a landscape ordinance in there? Because that's typically the mechanism to kind of address outdoor water use and waste. I don't know if the outdoor water use waste would be addressed through conservation tap fees, tiered rates, and dedication policy, unless maybe water
would
budget would accomplish
agree.
that.
Yeah.
I mean, don't you think if you make water more expensive, people are going to
Yeah.
be more judicious in how they use it?
Yeah.
Oh,
Some of
absolutely.
your dialogues around this were like the
Yeah.
specific ones were about how to change your conservation tap fees and your tiered rates so that, you know, the like in the document, I'm pretty sure that's in there where you get it, changing those so that outdoor water use became, I can't remember, I'm not a tiered rate person, so like became your second tier, and you what was specifically getting to that. And
Yeah.
I think like all your indoor use was in your first tier.
But it's a good point
Landscape
that,
budgets did it something different.
no. But it's a good point that Frank brings up, which is that, you know, the ordinances are also doing the same thing. They're discouraging, you know, wasteful water use. And so I guess we just need to be, we're probably going to have to repeat this. It might be a little bit redundant. They're both getting at the same thing.
So you have right here, require, it doesn't say policy, but it says require efficient irrigation design and equipment. And my understanding was that was getting at policy.
I almost, Austin and Frank, I'm feeling like maybe with this particular one, we've got the advanced water and land use integration portion, we've got the irrigation requirements portion. I'm wondering if it's okay to leave the codes and ordinances out of this one because it's mostly about pricing. Just because it's kind of covered in those other two bullets. What do you all think? Because I agree that they're all working together. Well, okay, maybe the codes and ordinances aren't really called out in the water and land use integration.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe I take it
I
back.
think
Okay.
I think that's actually, we're finding, I think that's a really, we've just nailed something that we haven't called out enough, which is kind of implied in the water and land use integration, but it's not specific.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just curious. Yeah, you know, when you go through the document, I like the fact that a lot of the things that we're using are positives. They encourage, you know, like we're using very positive words. And I'm just wondering whether or not the to discourage part really, because isn't that indeed what it's gonna do? Like, do we have to call that out? Does that make
I'm
sense?
sorry,
Am
you're
I
talking
just,
about the,
yeah,
okay.
the
Well-
to discourage wasteful outdoor water use, because the encouragement does that. I mean, that's throughout the whole document. Maybe I'm being a little Pollyanna today for Monday.
I don't think so, Lisa. I think you're on, because if you look at what Allison stated in the chat, she's also talking about non-municipalities, including herself, possibly you, and
Right,
organizations like
special
mine need to
districts.
have some approaches. So, you know, I guess we need to be mindful of the range of options available to the different water providers depending upon their format.
Right.
You know, we don't do rates per se, but we try to price in the value of water in the units that people own and acquire.
And we
maybe-
do have a model landscape ordinance that we do try to use as a tool. So,
Yeah, you know, and I really do hear what you're saying, Lisa. At the same time, to me, this whole water pricing, like we want to ensure that the essential water use and reasonable outdoor use is priced reasonably, right? And then over irrigation needs to be priced really high. So in some ways, um, to me, though, the water budgets and the conservation oriented rates are really about pricing excess irrigation extremely high to discourage its use. So, I mean, I do like stating things positively. At the same time, I kind of think like, to be honest about what these really are, I kind of like the wording that it has to discourage wasteful outdoor use, but
no, I can see that. You know, it's like, I just, I like the encouragement part and the discourage those heavy water users, wasteful water users. are hopefully going to start becoming smaller and smaller percentages of our customer base. And so, I don't know. I can see your point though, Catherine. Totally. I mean, it's just, you're being more straightforward and transparent about it.
Yeah, and I think too, to me, when we've been working on water budgets for a while now, and within our organization, when we really communicate that this is targeted for really inefficient irrigation use, but the rest of the users that are within, a reasonable range, they're not going to really be affected by water budgets, then people start to say like, oh, okay, I can get on board with that versus we're going to use these budgets to like pressure everybody down. Um, so just a thought.
Yeah. Well, and this also ties into the equity recommendation, to address equity concerns, because I think that's, the big concern with aggressive, water pricing to manage use is, its effect on people who can least afford it. And I think, a lot of utilities have done some pretty creative approaches to protect, the tiered rates. That's what the tiered rate structure is supposed to do, right? It protects people who are just using the standards amount of water that you need to survive, and it basically creates a marketplace for more high volume water users, that's more it's priced in a lot of those externalities. So maybe we need to cross-reference those somehow, but I think at least in the address equity concern recommendation, I think it should be mentioned that any kind of pricing schemes that are used must be done in a way that protects those who are least able to afford, those who are most vulnerable.
Right. And so just quick thing, there was an edit here added by Jenna that's in purple, that I think maybe captures some of the positive and language on both sides. And then we do have an equity statement. We can go back and look at that to make sure that it does capture that. But I think there's an equity lens on this. But do you want to change housing affordability to be more about the population than the structure? So that question. And then on code, I just want to sort of capture, yes, there is no place in here that says specifically adopt landscape codes. As someone who writes them, there are within all of the recommendations, turf policy, irrigation policy, vegetation, landscape, like all of those get implemented in the landscape code. So it's actually in there. It's embedded into different recommendations that would change your existing landscape code. So just a point of clarification. Yeah, the one above is more vague, but the other recommendations trigger changes to your landscape code. So if you adopt turf policy, it changes your landscape code. If you adopt irrigation policy, it changes your landscape code. Does that make sense? Okay.
So Lisa, I'm wondering if we change that word wasteful, if we change that to inefficient, if that just carries less judgment there potentially.
Yeah, and I apologize because I don't mean to. There's just something about just kind of underlying everything we're really talking about here, right? Is how do you make this so it's understandable and a positive aspirational thing for everybody to want to do? So I think you're absolutely right, though. That's the point of what we're talking about.
Okay.
Allison has a comment here on the chat for that last part about balancing bills and housing affordability, to changing it to something more like maintain affordability for efficient use, to help maintain affordability for efficient use.
I like that.
Say it again.
So I think this is where it's plugging in, and help maintain affordability for efficient use.
Because we use efficient use, can it just say maintain affordability?
Or I'm wondering if you could say like to maintain or to encourage and maintain affordability for efficient use, like just move it up there.
Okay. I'm sure here for a moment. All right, so I'm going to read this because it's getting like, encourage pricing mechanisms such as conservation tap fees, tiered rates, water dedication policy, and water budgets to encourage and maintain affordability for efficient use and discourage inefficient outdoor water use and help balance bills and housing affordability. But we're saying delete that bit.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
This feels like a stronger statement now.
Anyone disagree? If I delete that end of that sentence that's currently highlighted?
And I think this also reflects the work of Colorado Waterwise with regard to those best practices. I believe this is going to be supporting those revisions. So I think we've combined a lot of things together here effectively.
Okay, one last thing, and this is just a tiny wordsmithing thing. Do we want to say conservation oriented rates instead of tiered rates? Because there are different types of conservation oriented rates, but that may be splitting hairs and it may not be worth it.
I guess that calls out the elimination of the non-conservation tiered rates, which do exist, right? Is that what you're getting at? Is
Yeah, like there's summer summer irrigation pricing. That's not necessarily a tiered rate, but it is a way that some utilities can get to a conservation oriented rate without tiers.
So let me make a suggestion. So maybe it's adding an and. So conservation, it could say, encourage pricing mechanisms such as conservation-oriented tap fees and tiered rates, comma, water dedication policy, comma, and water budgets.
Sure, I think that would work, and maybe we would just change tiered to water rates.
We need oriented, conservation-oriented tap fees, and say that last edit again. Water rates.
Yeah, just because there's different ways to get to that.
Okay. Sorry for all the caps. I was trying to like track my own changes and it just got messy. All right. Are we at a point where this one, we're ready to take a vote? Okay. Does anyone have any thing they cannot live with or disagree with this one? Okay. Moving on. So we have 3, and I just want to be cognizant. I can't remember how long we thought we would do this. What was on the calendar?
11:30.
Okay. I'm pretty sure I hit accept as I was going down for the count on all of these. Excuse me. Oops, sorry. So we have build capacity. And so the question on this one was whether everything you're recommending kind of captures capacity that you're wanting to build. And therefore a statement saying build capacity to achieve these things is redundant. And therefore this can be struck, or I want to throw out what I heard from all of you was that you wanted to ensure that there was support for programming that would continue to build capacity. And yes, you identified what those were, but you were getting at a recommendation that I think was more about Yeah, I'll leave it at that. What do you guys want to do with this one? Is it redundant?
I think so.
Yeah, I think if there's a breadcrumb like Russ has mentioned, if there's a breadcrumb that we could reference that says, hey, we do need to build capacity with landscape industry, whomever, small water providers, even water conservation staff that we could find in the document and reference, then I think that would check the box for me.
Agree with that.
You know, this is already implicit in many of the other points.
Does anyone want to make an argument for keeping it in?
You talking about the one with red in the bottom, right?
The recommendation as a whole, there was edits to it, and then there's recommendations to strike for redundancy.
I'm going to vote for keeping, but I'm open to hearing other people's perceptions. I realize so far I'm in the losing side of this. The rationale I would have for keeping it is I just don't know if I don't think that water is much of a focus for many of the people involved in the commercial use. You know, it's a line item payment on their invoice and they pay it. And I think we have more understanding to go here, understanding to do, and more opportunity. So I don't want to underrepresent the opportunity to engage these other parties in this effort too. But I'm willing to accommodate it elsewhere in the other sections as proposed.
Yeah. Can I ask a clarifying question, Frank? Commercial users are the target audience, from what I'm hearing from you. Are other recommendations for turf or irrigation that are sort of actionable for whatever they're doing, are they as a target audience included in implementation of those other recommendations? Or does there need to be an explicit recommendation that's about commercial landscapes and users? So just, I guess my question is, like, under the turf, if we went down and looked at these, under turf, would that not target commercial existing development, irrigation efficiency? And then the ones we did today for, well, yeah, price signals. So you're saying, like, build capacity for them to.
When you show me those other sections, it does make more sense that it's implicitly present elsewhere. I guess I could buy that they're going to be covered through the other mechanism. So I don't want to be duplicative.
There's one section too, Frank, I don't have the report open, but it specifically calls out HOAs, right? Like we need to work with HOAs, and just like what I'm hearing you saying sounds really analogous to that, but with the commercial folks. And so I'm wondering if in the report, like we could look at where it says like HOAs, we need to like work with, develop, educational resources and whatnot. And maybe there's something similar with commercial users.
Well, I almost see commercial users as a superset of HOAs. HOAs are, included within, but, for example, we've done a ton of work with churches more recently. That's been surprising for us, and now schools. So I don't want to just consider that HOAs are the primary target when there's others that have significant amounts of turf too, and or opportunities for water efficiency improvements.
And can I ask, like, this is a dumb question. If turf policy prohibitions are put in place, will that not implicitly require that all of these are dealt with?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, even my brain, I think Frank has a really good point. In my brain, I think about the landscape industry, what their skill set is. Focused on today, not everybody, but I do think that there is probably a big investment in terms of capacity building to ensure that those folks have the skills and knowledge needed to be able to install and maintain landscapes of the future. And then I think there is this component also on the water customer side, you know. So I don't know if it needs to be a recommendation.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Catherine.
No, I've reached my the end of my out loud thinking.
Well, you know, we use the term build capacity regularly to defend some of our investments into that industry regarding training and all kinds of other support, so that we can have, speaking of, you know, positioning this document in a positive light, we want them to come alongside and to see this as a business opportunity and not feel defensive as if it's a heavy-handed mechanism from the state, which it may need to be considering the status of the river. But you know, if we could see them invest in their staff and capabilities through training, then we, you know, I would want them to propose the solutions for these for these transformations to their customers outside of being forced to. So I guess I see it as kind of like I'm seeking the breadcrumb of adoption in a way that is bringing them along without force. So you know, that's part of the reason that John's on this too, is how can we get this group of people who are already struggling in many different ways to make their businesses work? How can we make this an opportunity for them? So I just think that the building capacity portion is important, because there's also a lot of other ancillary efforts to make this happen. So I don't want to disregard those, even though we have partner with industries there too. So I guess that's it's completely the same thing.
Yeah, so I was gonna say maybe to if we're trying to somehow create a statement that is, you know, showing them this is sort of, I'm feeling like there's kind of two things going on here. One is, again, kind of throwing out language that is inclusive of wanting them to be partners in landscape transformation. I know we were not going to edit what we've already edited, but for the purposes of refinement and simplifying, what I think I'm hearing is, you know, partnering with industries is very broad as a heading. So I think under this statement, if we added collaborate with landscape professionals, which you guys spent a lot of time talking about needing to build capacity for, and it doesn't say build capacity, but it says collaborate with. If we added collaborate with landscape professionals and the business sector to advance landscape transformation solutions, that would be calling them out as a target audience more directly, or we can add a statement under build capacity that is more specific to that. It's your call, Frank.
I like that idea. Frank, what do you think of enhancing that partner with industries one just by adding capacity building and maybe business sector to that one?
Yeah, I could buy into that. You know, for those unaware, Catherine and I and one of her staff were at the ALCC Fall Forum, which is a collection of the state's landscape leadership, you know, the major firms that do the work. And and of course, Russ presented there too. You know, a lot of the talk that day revolved around how can they position themselves to participate? What do they need? Whether it's funding, whether it's other tools, you know, to stay solvent, but also, so yes, Marjo, I could see if you improve that portion at the bottom and add, you know, business sector, and as long as there's a build capacity component to it that speaks to the opportunities to provide additional training and other options, I think that helps us feel like we're recognizing their awareness of the problem. It's not that they don't want to do this, but sometimes, you know, in the position of being a, you know, they're serving a client, sometimes they can't push water efficiency. So I'm just looking for a way to meet those two together.
Yep. Would everyone agree with that modification?
Yeah, because right now, as written, the partner with industry, it's actually written in a way it's just about plant materials. And I think we should broaden that to talk about, you know, building collaborations and building new market mechanisms to, you know, to get the landscaping, plant materials. It's like, it's much broader. I think it should be much broader than we've written it.
I'm intent wise, I think landscape transformation was very broad to inclusive of everything.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to reopen editing the whole thing because I think that was your intent, was everything.
So Marjorie, just to clarify there, it's strike, but add businesses and build capacity to partnerships, right?
Okay. We're ready to move? Okay. So 2 remaining. Next one, address equity concerns. Consider equity issues in outdoor water conservation policy, regulation, rate structures, fees, and programs in ways that increase opportunities to participate in water conservation and or support under irrigated areas by maximizing tree health and community and ecosystem benefits where those amenities have been missing. That's a lot. I think your intent is there. It's just a little bit of a word salad.
What if you just take out and or support under irrigated areas? Just a question, right? Because then you're talking about equity issues. You want to increase opportunities to participate in water conservation by maximizing. Then you talk about community and ecosystem benefits where they have been missing. So I guess that's a question if that works to shorten it a little bit.
Okay, so sorry, it was.
Yeah, if you just took out that all the way, keep going, stop. Nope, leave the by maximizing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like the piece that's missing here is affordability. Like, I feel like we should at least mention that word. Like, that to me seems in a bullet under equity. To me, that's making sure that basic water access is affordable seems way more important than like maximizing tree health and ecosystem benefits. I mean, if you can't pay for water, none of that stuff matters.
So agreed. So the increased opportunities to participate in water conservation, is that not, if that, I just think that's kind of a weird phrasing, but that's me inserting here. But if it were to say, consider equity issues in outdoor water conservation policy, regulation, rate structures, fees, and programs in ways that protect affordability and maximize tree health and community and ecosystem benefits where those amenities have been missing, is that not more the intent of what you've been talking about?
To me, the intent there is, I do agree with Austin that essential water use affordability is really important, and also it's the ability to participate in landscape benefits, right? All these landscapes provide economic, environmental, and human well-being benefits, and we want to ensure that all people have access to those. So it's water affordability and the access to landscape benefits.
Yeah, and I'll speak for my experience in Colorado Springs Utilities, where the unintended consequence of some rate increases and other components led to a large portion of the city becoming unwatered. People just stopped irrigating outside, and the result of that was a relatively large area of abandonment of landscapes. And so that led to a perception of reduced value in the community, reduced accessibility. All those benefits that we speak of were no longer present in a large portion of the city. So I think that's what we're trying to avoid here by specifying this is we want there to be outdoor water access to people so that they can improve, maintain and improve their landscapes for their benefit, also of their neighbors and the community. So I do think it's important to retain this one, is we don't want to have the risk of this occurring in other areas. And it's a heck of a lot more difficult to restore that irrigation option for people once it's been lost because of the plant health and the cost and complexity. Catherine, if I'm misrepresented, please correct.
I think that
No.
I think that sounds good, Frank. I'm kind of hung up on the first part, the address equity concerns and then consider equity issues. Whether we address them or consider them, it seems like that's kind of one place where we could maybe reduce some of the words. And so we could get in some of what Frank's talking about, which I think is important. We could say something like in the creation of or development of outdoor water conservation policy, regulation, rate structures, fees, and programs, increase opportunities to participate in water conservation. So make it much like a stronger, like you address it, and the way you address it is you're definitively increasing it. You're not just considering it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah,
See,
I know.
first
What's that?
statement here was
So
in the development of.
yeah, in the development or creation of, whichever one you think is more appropriate. And then get rid of in ways that. So you're increasing it. You're going to do that. And then I like Frank's ad with Catherine's.
So if you're doing that, can you remove in water conservation? Because you already have in the development of outdoor water conservation policy, like it seems like we're repeating that.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just ensure water affordability. Although in my mind, I want to ensure water affordability for essential use, not for all
Right.
use,
Exactly.
but for essential use.
And Marjo, I know you're having so much fun, but the program that between the programs and increase, it's just a sentence is awkward. So
Yeah.
either take it out and it just makes it an active sentence.
Yeah, and I like that. And I almost wonder if we should just put a period after benefits, because I really honor what Frank said. I think we could just maybe leave it broad at this point. See
Yeah,
how
and
that works.
And I think that gets to your point. I think it was Catherine that it should be there for everyone. You probably need a comma after programs.
Yes, you do.
Right.
And just to be consistent with all the other ones, it does need to repeat address equity concerns or something like that, right? Like in all the other ones, like it's a complete sentence after the bolded recommendation.
Oh, I understand what you're saying. You're saying right. Presses on it. Okay.
There you go.
Even though I
Russ.
think Lisa had a good point to be a little stronger than consider, maybe.
Ensure.
Incorporate.
Yeah, something like that.
I know that Russ knows. My husband's actually the head of the EJ program at EPA Region 8. So we talk about this stuff all the time. All the time. This is dinner table conversation.
Thanks for bringing your expertise. Okay. Is everyone okay with this edit, or should I say, does anyone have any oppositions to how this is edited?
I think with the new language there, incorporate equity in, I think then we'd have to take away the comma after programs and say to
Thanks, Russ. Okay. This is not a 2 either. It should be that. Or just increase opportunities for, or to ensure is not gonna, it's not correct.
Well, I almost wonder if the increased opportunities is really related to the landscape benefits, and we just want to ensure water affordability in our programs.
You mean move?
I think I'm saying that first. Okay, the first increase opportunities we could, can we delete that one?
So you're saying it would say, and programs to ensure water affordability for essential use and increase opportunity or access.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand. All right. Are we there?
I wonder if we just, okay, do we need like some word at the end that says an increased access to landscape benefits for all? For all is a kind of a goofy statement, but for everyone, something, I don't know. Maybe we don't need that. That'd be my last change. So maybe we're wrapping that up.
Okay. You could just say access community landscape benefits. No, that wouldn't work either. Let's leave it.
Let's leave it. I'm good. We just end it here. There we go. Stop on a good note.
I do. What if you put community wide at the very end? Does that work? Because you're just trying to make sure. Yeah, I do like that, Catherine. I think that would be good. But is that, I mean, I'm happy moving on too, but community wide is better than for all, maybe?
Would it go before it'd be access to community wide landscape benefits or landscape benefits community wide? Okay. All right. Any opposition? Okay. All right, last one.
So just real quick to make sure that we captured everything with the change to the partner with industries, I'm just putting in the chat what I'm gleaning from this comment to strike but add businesses and build capacity and partnerships. Is this what everybody meant?
It would read collaborate and build capacity with landscape professionals and business to advance landscape transformation solutions generally.
I like what Jenna has in the chat a little more.
Oh, where is it?
Oh, sorry,
Oh, in the chat. Sorry, I don't have my chat open because I'm trying to see all of you on the screen. Okay.
Collaborate with landscape professionals and businesses to advance landscape transformation solutions and build capacity.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so with the kind of coming back to this was proposed by Amy and Tori as an edit to this drought management statement to sort of echo some of the language that's coming out of the drought task force. And there was an edit to add statewide water challenges within that text.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little broad. I realize we're going from rather specific to not, but Amy, or I know Tori's not here, but do we, is there some element you want to particularly call out, kind of going back from it, or? I guess I'll see what the rest of the group thinks.
Is Amy, I thought Amy said she couldn't be back till 11.
Yeah, she'll be back in 7 minutes, so.
And then Greg Fisher, I know, had to hop off too. But Frank, I can just try to address what you're asking just based on our conversation with them when they submitted this to us behind the scenes. I think it was, if I'm threading the needle, what I think I heard, and maybe speaks to why this is broad, is that I think Greg Fisher's suggestion was, and maybe this was the understanding of others, because I think Laura had reached out to us on this too, is that maybe this doesn't need to be an action, but could go into the kind of the area that we have right before these recommendations, like kind of like general agreement. But if we did that, it would lose like this thought process being highlighted. And so I think that they liked keeping it as action because it broad, and Tori told me, I don't know how it could not be broad, what we're saying here. So I think this was their kind of trying to ride the through line between that, keep this highlighted in a way that brought it to attention, but I don't know that they felt they could be more specific. That was my take.
Okay.
And so Russ, just, and everyone, so this, you know, we just said this came out of like demand management work group is having a similar recommendation. And so with that in mind, right, like this says, you know, in addition to like at the municipal level and providing, you know, maximizing municipal water portfolios, and I assume that means like, you know, water provider, community operational flexibility. The idea is like, are there ways and opportunities at times where some of these savings potentially could have broader impacts that could have more statewide benefits? And so I guess I'm just wondering, because I think that's important. And I think that's why the governor, you know, one of the reasons I would assume this rises to the governor's level of interest, right? It's not just that he wants like Colorado Springs to make sure their water supply is reliable. And so it's investments, but it's also, it seems to me like it's a little more than investments, right? Like there's all this, there's policy implications there, right? Like right now, we don't have the policies in place where we could necessarily like route conserved water to the state line. And I don't want to get too crazy here, but I'm not sure just ongoing investments is like enough. We might want to rework that part a little bit.
And also, yeah, and if it's about investments, then maybe advanced partnerships is the wrong heading because they're different. If I were a legislator reading this, I'm not sure I would. I mean, I guess that's on me. I don't really understand what this is promoting.
So this is promoting like shared sacrifice in a way that when one entity has to do a reduction in water use, oftentimes others do not. And I think this is trying to speak to if one entity does some conservation, another one might just grab that water and use it how it pleases. And I think they're trying to promote an alternative approach to what statewide water use looks like.
Maybe a better word is like integration across water utilities and providers and managers or something like that. The partnerships, because I would personally, when I see the partnerships, it makes me think of the partner with industry that we have above. And I would wonder how they're different. And but I see what you're saying, Frank. And so it's kind of sharing pain and sharing benefits, almost like.
Yeah, I guess the three through lines for me, based on all these conversations, I think not just making conserved water necessary. I mean, I think practically a lot of times conserved water will go to growth, but are there other opportunities beyond that that could be used to, you know, in-stream benefits or agricultural benefits or other, is kind of one of the through lines in that thought. And the partnerships, I guess, being that there may not always be at least an immediate hammer. I mean, I guess you could get there through some kind of legal requirements. But you know, where could you enter into partnerships outside of that would, you know, promote, you know, I'm thinking about things that even Northern's worked on, just in terms of trying to kind of get be in front of creating situations when you have those opportunities to maybe benefit the diversion, but the streams on both sides. You're providing benefits on both sides of the slope.
Yeah, I mean, I'm at the risk of becoming a hypocrite here by talking about this in some ways, but I know what this sensitivity is about, and I think we all, there's multiple parties within some of our organizations who are talking on these topics. But one of the things Russ might be referring to is the achievement of some new types of work to provide benefits on both sides of the divide when either water development occurs or water reductions occur. That's not bad what you've written there.
Does that just need to call out conserved water?
No, I don't.
No.
I mean, it's good to do that. There's also opportunities, I think, to move outside of that. Yeah, I guess if we're going to be very targeted, we could just talk about what happens to conserved water. Maybe since that's the focus of our document, that's the right way to go. Russ, do you think that leaves out some of the broader discussions that are underway too?
That's a good question. I was thinking the same thing in my head, but like I think that the through line here is if you remove turf, and you're freeing up water or any conservation effort, what are you using it for is probably the right context for this. So I guess I like keeping it, but it's all whatever you decide.
I mean, this is about outdoor water conservation, this task force, right? So there's obviously a lot more going on, but is there any, I guess, Frank, back to you, with that in mind specifically, can we keep conserved water in there? Because is that what we're talking about, or is it broader?
There's the legal, we can't get outside of the legal enforcement of water rights, but yeah, maybe that's the right thing to do. Is we're calling out a new paradigm here of what happens to conserved water, right? I guess if we're gonna ask that question before, people didn't want to talk about it. Yeah, this is more positive too, like Lisa was saying earlier. I think we're leading in the direction of continuing the dialogue and creating options instead of just one person utilizes the same mechanism they always have.
All right. So we're in a good place on this one. That was a good dialogue, actually. That helped rewrite it quite easily.
And Marjorie, just quick, and Russ and everyone. So do you think as written, this is true to what like Tori and the River District were meaning?
I think so. Being that Amy's going to jump back on, I sure would like her blessing on it as well. But it seems to me fairly similar to what they wrote. And I think if not, Austin had a really good point. Like, is it just investments? I think that probably broadens it out, and the title change is probably clearer. So I think yes.
The only thing I'll say is I think people are still going to be a little confused about why we have partnerships in 2 bullets. So it, maybe we need a different word, maybe creative collaborations or something like that, because I mean, we need to be as clear as possible about how each one is distinct. And if I'm summarizing them like partners with industry and then support creative partnerships and opportunities, it's gonna be a little confusing.
Yeah, and this one's very specifically water providers, I mean, and water utilities.
Except that, yes, that needs to be, I think that needs to be made more clear.
Okay.
It's not clear enough yet.
What is it? Support statewide collaboration?
Yes, maybe that's a good way to say it. Yes, it's a different scale and it's a different mechanism. Yeah.
Yeah, damn it. My fingers have stopped working.
It's always fun to have people watch you type.
I know. I'm on
Yeah,
my A game today too.
And I think this is also good because it reflects some really current work that has been well received on both sides of the divide through different types of parties, the counties, water providers, districts. I think, you know, this collectively reflects, if you will, a new way of doing business.
Yeah, so the only, given, Russ, you guys have had these conversations, the only thing that I may have edited while I was listening that I'm just capturing is this one has investments as one, and then it says alongside the work of the utilities. And the way that I rewrote it is a little that it's about supporting the work of the utilities. So hopefully I didn't lose. It's just more directive and enabling, giving them enabling authority to do good work, which I thought is what I was hearing.
You have investments in there though.
Mhm.
Okay.
It feels on point to me. I mean, if Amy is going to jump back on in a little bit, I'd definitely love to get her 2 cents. And then I know Greg had to hop off. It seemed like Greg, Tori, and Amy had the strongest thoughts here, but I think we could just, if this group is generally okay as is with maybe some minor tweaks that just honor what they're trying to get across, we could just follow up with them.
Yeah. Great. So if we are good with this, that means we've actually made it through all the recommendations. Where are you guys all feeling? Are you feeling good? Okay. In general now, we've got agreement. If anyone shows up this afternoon, we can vet these. I don't know if there's another, like, do we do anything after this afternoon? What's the process? Next process, Kat and Jenna and Russ?
I'll let Jenna add on because she probably has the details in her mind, and I, like you, Marja, I'm a little under the weather, but you know, I think basically what we laid out in the last few slides, we'll send a copy to Gov's office, and we can send you that copy too. Just it seemed like there may have been concerns if anything would change. I'm not expecting that to happen, but we can send you what we pass along, and I think most of the edits are confined. There was a couple of places that I think the task force had mentioned that might need to be repeated in the document, but I think that they're actually already there. So in the 2 cases that I'm thinking of, you guys have provided edits or will by the end of today, and we'll take those into account. We're going to do a copy edit, and I've impressed upon our comms folks not to change words because the words that we chose they're there for a reason. So just, you know, really looking for punctuation, grammar stuff that it just stands out if there's anything left. We have, you know, we'll run by legal and have some kind of disclaimer. I think those are kind of, you know, all the changes. I know I'm working to see Austin. I guess that's the only thing that's hanging for me is like I don't know if I can do it. I can definitely fit all the recommendations on one page, especially as we've made some space. I may or may not be able to do the first sentence from each in the upfront part. In the latter part, we said it could flow across 2 pages, so that's not a problem. But some of these sentences are still just really long. Like understanding land use codes is kind of a mega sentence.
However you do it, I think the one thing that's really important is somewhere there needs to be a sentence that explains that in order to accomplish a lot of these recommended things, a bunch of research is needed, and we detail it somewhere. I don't think that sentence is quite there yet.
Okay.
Catherine has her hand up.
Just one thing for Russ and Kat and Jenna. Over the weekend, I was thinking about the change that we made to the partnerships one about the landscape, the partner with industries one. And I was just thinking that even though I'm happy with it is how it is now, I feel like maybe we lost a little bit in identifying that there's some supply chains issues that will need to be addressed. So just wanted to ensure that that's kind of embedded in the report
I
somewhere.
had that same feeling, Catherine. I mean, it's at the risk of opening that back up, we could see if I do feel like that's in the report, but maybe probably that same section that you were referencing, Catherine, the artist formerly known as Big Ideas, the additional areas of discussion, is probably in one of those themes there, if there's anything else to call out. But I kind of agree, like I like the way it's written too. It does seem very narrow, and it seemed like there's landscape professionals were a piece of it, but just, plant availability, or maybe we've got that captured with businesses. So yeah, if there's a place that you feel like that could be said more strongly, just please give us that edit.
Okay, thank you. It's like the one thing I worried about and wish we could go back to that conversation, but I know we don't have time, so I'll take a look. Thank you.
And Amy just returned to the room.
Yeah, I apologize. I had to jump out. But it looks like the group worked up a alternative recommendation that seems to look great to me.
Well, that's great. That's what we wanted to hear.
Good.
Awesome.
I apologize. I missed this conversation, so I'm happy if there were any questions directed at me with the language, but I appreciate just the group's willingness to talk through it.
Okay, so next steps then, if you have any additional comments, like red flags in the draft for the rest of the content that you have not shared, please share that with them by the end of today if you want to see that potentially addressed. The next version that you see will be the one that goes to the governor's office, which you will not have an opportunity to comment on. And if anyone shows up in the afternoon session, we're going to kind of vet these with them. And if there's anything strongly that they object to, we'll sort of figure out what to do with that, but I don't anticipate that.
And we'll see how long we may cut that meeting short. Marja, right now, I think, and Jenna, you can confirm, it just seems like it's Greg that's coming back, which maybe I'm sure would be interested in this one we just did, but I think he would probably like it too. So we'll just kind of talk about where we landed, and hopefully we can button that one up. I did want to also address, Jenna, what's the other, we had always envisioned that we might put a final like closeout, like celebratory kind of meeting is probably not the right word, but get together. We have some constraints obviously on what we can purchase in terms of beverages and things like that, but we had a January date. We may look at moving that or finding a place. I know that we had a few offers of using somebody's place if they had a big office, like I think Bao had offered up her location, for example. So we might still look at that. It was a missing piece that we never got to do, and we led the water equity task force. We never really got to get everybody together because we were still in COVID, but I'm hoping that there's an opportunity, and maybe it's something just easiest to do at Water Congress, but I wanted to address why that meeting invite was still on your calendars. And if you can just be a little patient with us, we'll look at how to shift that. But I thought it'd be nice just to, especially when we know if there's anything back from the governor, we can say that there, or say that there was no change at all. And then we can just maybe, it'd be nice just to hang out together and say thank you.
It's currently on the calendar for January 8th from 10 to 3, which I don't know is the best time. So we can also figure that out.
It's gonna have to be a breakfast.
Yeah. But Commons Denver Botanic Gardens also has an open offer to host as well at no
Oh,
charge.
that was the other one. Yeah.
Uh,
So we'll try
Cool.
to make something fun, more fun. I don't know. I mean, breakfast could be fun, but we'll see if there's something else.
I also want to remind everyone of the Survey Monkey link for the order of the recommendations. We've had 10 people respond, so if you haven't, please do to weigh in. That also will be by the end of today so that we can incorporate everything tomorrow and so that we can get it to the copy editing phase.
And Jenna does have the language prior to today, so like some of the
Yes.
ones that we struck, you could just rank them at the bottom, I guess, if you haven't done that already, and we'll just know that they're going to be the ones that fall off.
Yeah, that's a good point, that the language is the new language and not were the ones we covered today. So just take that with a grain of salt when you're ranking them.
Concept. Go for concept.
Yeah.
Can you reset someone's? Because like I did it, I thought we had said we were taking out like the statewide collaboration one, for example. So I just slammed it at the bottom because I thought it wasn't. Can you reset someone's if we want to be pains and go back?
You can, if it's in, you can delete her response and it would allow her to come back in, most likely, because it does it by IP address. And if that doesn't work, then use a different email.
Sweet, I can vote more than once. Sorry to be a pain.
Telling you all how to cheat, so just ignore that. Don't ever do it.
Laura, I'll email you to figure out how to delete your previous.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
Or just send them to her in an email.
Yeah, and then I can just adjust for that.
Okay, thanks.
Jenna, maybe this was just me, but I don't think I got the invite for the afternoon office hours. I think I have a conflict, but I was just wondering, maybe that's why there's lower participation there.
Open it up real quick.
But maybe it was just something wonky that happened with my calendar.
Let me resend it. Since everybody looks to be on here, let's resend it. Let me know if you get it.
While she's double checking with that, thank you, everyone. That was awesome for making it through all of these together and collectively and in consensus. I love it. And I really appreciate the time and effort you put into what is very tedious work. But I think you did a great job strengthening these. So thanks.
I'll say the same. And also I was trying to see if I could knock this out real quick, just if it helps you, if you're good and you don't want to vote on this. I think this is the order that they're in right now. That did not come across clean. Sorry.
What is it in, Russ?
I just put it in the meeting chat. I can put it at the front of the document too, if that's easier. We can just do that up here.
Yeah, why don't you do it just at the top? So if I'm not sharing, but I'll share again real quick.
I just want to express my appreciation to Russ and everybody at CWCB for the opportunity to participate with this particular task force. It's been a real pleasure learning with you and working with you. I'm sad to see it end because it's always fun to collaborate with peers like this.
Thank you so much, Frank. Thanks to all of you. It has been fun and it's good conversation that's been needed. So I'm excited to get this out there and hopefully it will get some readership. And if nothing else, I mean, we'll all be able to point to it as important stuff. And I think that's great. I popped those in. Oh, go ahead.
Let's write another report together just for fun.
There you go.
That's been awesome. That's been a great experience.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Ditto what Frank said.
All right then. If you unless you have anything else, you're welcome to sign off and get on with your busy days.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
everyone.
Thanks everyone.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.